There's a famous discourse where the Buddha talks about pain, how the wise person experiencing pain feels it as the pain that comes from being shot by one arrow. But the person whose mind is not trained turns around and shoots himself with another arrow. Well, it's not really just one arrow. There are lots of arrows. There are all the emotional pains and the distress that we feel over physical pain. And an important part of the practice is learning how to recognize that first pain and not start shooting ourselves up with all the other arrows. The same principle applies to emotional pain. A thought will come into the mind, spark a reaction, but then we choose to keep repeating that reaction, repeating the pain, and piling on more and more problems, more and more arrows with the various ways that we analyze the pain itself, the original impulse, and the processes that the mind is going through. These are more and more arrows we keep shooting at ourselves, particularly when the emotion has a strong hormonal reaction. It starts getting into the body. Then we take the body as evidence that that emotion is still there, that feeling is still there, that pain is still there. And so we keep shooting ourselves again and again based on that reaction as well. So an important point of the meditation is to learn how to separate these things out. So you see the initial impulse and realize that's basically old karma. And we have this brain that has neurons firing all the time, so thoughts are bound to come up. And every now and then you trip over a thought that's really painful. There's nothing much you can do about that. That's what happens. But it's what you do next. That's your karma in the present moment. That's your new karma. And this is where training the mind can make a big difference. So you can see how you're shooting yourself. And again, it comes down to that old issue of seeing yourself do things that you know are not quite wise, but you don't know how to do it any different way, or there's a stubbornness that refuses to do it a different way. And that's what requires patience. So you don't immediately jump on top of yourself and make things worse. Remember, as we're meditating, we're here to learn about the mind in hopes that someday our knowledge will enable us to develop more and more skillful habits. But sometimes you have to watch yourself doing something really stupid over and over again before you can catch sight of why you're doing it. So that's where patience comes in. It's not just accepting things as they are and saying, well, this is the way they're going to be for the rest of my life. It doesn't accomplish much. Simply sit there and watch yourself get angry for 20 years, or upset, or lustful, or whatever, and just accept the fact that that's the way it's always going to be. That doesn't work. You have to learn how to watch the mind so you can finally figure out, well, why am I doing this? It's painful. It's piling more and more suffering on top. And you can finally see, oh, this is why. This is one of the reasons why when the Buddha was teaching Rahula meditation, he was going to teach him breath meditation, but he didn't start out with breath meditation. He started out by saying, keep your mind like the earth. Meditate to make your mind in tune with the earth, in the sense that people will throw disgusting things on the earth, but the earth doesn't react. Train your mind to be like wind. Wind blows disgusting things around, but the wind doesn't get upset. train it to be like fire. Fire burns garbage, but the fire doesn't feel distaste at the garbage. Make your mind in tune with water. Water washes dirty things away, but the water itself is not repelled by those dirty things. This is a quality of mind you want to develop, so you can face whatever comes up in the meditation, both the initial impulses and both the initial arrow and all the other arrows that you shoot at yourself. Try to develop some endurance, saying if I'm going to get past this, I have to understand it, and if I'm going to understand it, I have to watch it, and to watch it with any kind of precision, I have to develop patience. A lot of the Forest Ajahns discovered that this was the quality they had to develop in their Western disciples before they could teach them anything else. Learn patience, a certain level of acceptance. Not that that's the end point or the goal in the practice, but it's a means. It's a very important means for allowing us to observe the mind with more detachment, less self-recrimination. In other words, we don't keep shooting more and more arrows at ourselves for shooting arrows at ourselves, in the way the mind tends to get stuck in a hall of mirrors. It reacts to its reaction, to its reaction, to its reaction. It just keeps it going on and on and on. That doesn't accomplish anything. We're here to learn. And whatever sense of self we want to develop around the meditation, that sense of self that's willing to learn and is patient enough to see what's going on, and to look at things that we don't like to look at, because after all, what's the duty with regard to stress and suffering? Is to comprehend it. How are you going to comprehend it? You have to watch it for long periods of time. In other words, you have to learn how to sit with it. In hopes that you develop dispassion, because that's what comprehension means. You understand something to the point where you feel dispassionate toward it. Because we do have a lot of passion around our emotions. Even the unpleasant ones, we really like them in a strange way. So this way we have to learn how to step back a bit. This is what the concentration is for. This is why we try to develop mindfulness, alertness, and particularly, though, to learn how to get a sense of well-being that goes with getting the mind in stillness. So we're going to have the nourishment and strength to deal with the unpleasant things that are bound to come up. So even though there are arrows being shot, we keep watching, looking, trying to figure out what is going on here. Why does the mind feed on these emotions? Why is it so quick to keep on shooting those arrows? That means that we have to develop not only the patience to sit with these things, but also the clarity, so that we can be faster than the arrows. So we can see that an arrow is about to be shot, and we know why. So a lot of interesting things going on here. And that's the attitude we have to take toward these pains, to see them as interesting, a puzzle. Sometimes we sit here and meditate when things are going well. We get bored. We say, well, it's okay, and all of a sudden seems to be lots of space to do other things, as if nothing were happening right now. But a lot of things are happening. the breath that's coming in and out, having an impact on your body. You're thinking and evaluating things. That has an impact on your internal speech. Your feelings and perceptions flashing in the mind. And we stitch these things together. And we forget what the raw materials are. We just see the finished product. And we have a real talent for just keep on stitching and stitching and stitching. Of course, what is the stitching? The Buddha says the stitching is craving. This is all happening all the time, even when the mind is in a relatively peaceful state. One of the purposes of evaluating and playing with the breath is to bring that aspect of verbal fabrication up to the fore, to be clear about what are you thinking about, how are you fashioning your thoughts. You deal right with the breath right here, so that when the breath changes with an emotion, you're aware of it. You're right there. So all these factors, breath, directed thought, evaluation, feelings, and perception, we're trying to do them with as much knowledge as possible. So when they go off in a different direction, we're sensitive to those functions of the mind. As we develop sensitivity to these functions, then we begin to see more clearly what's going on. And you realize there's a lot of complex stuff happening in the present moment, even when things seem relatively calm. Nothing suspicious is happening. You have to be on your guard. You have to watch. So when something painful happens, you'll be prepared for it. You can see, oh, this is how the mind takes a pain and then makes more pain out of it. So try to take an interest in these processes. Get well acquainted with them. Because learning how to see these things as processes of the mind, that helps you deal with the pain when it comes. So not only do you have the patience and the endurance to sit with the pain and watch how it's happening, but you've got the right framework for figuring it out. Because the more knowledge you bring to the process of fabrication, the less you suffer. That you can learn why it is that you're shooting yourself with arrows, and you can finally see through to the point where you realize you don't have to do that anymore. You've got better things to do.